Boker Tov, Havirim. Welcome to our new series of online learning. Now, I've been doing Taste of Torah for 2 years now, and over my sabbatical, I gave you a cup of Kabbalah, and I'm just feeling like we have to change subjects, but we have to continue to be alliterative. So our new subject is Heartfelt Haftarah. All right, well, I'm going to talk to you about something we're not so familiar with, but we ought to be, and that is the Haftarah for each Torah portion, the companion reading that goes with the Torah portion. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this learning throughout the year into 2 sections. There's going to be what I call tent peg business. I'm going to explain the Haftarah, the sources, how they are selected, that sort of thing. And then the other half is going to be focused on some message within the Haftarah that I think is heartfelt and worth hearing. So let's start with the very notion of the Haftarah. What is it? It's not what our 13-year-olds think it is. It does not mean half Torah or anything like that. It comes from the root to conclude something, to bring a summary, to bring an end to something. And so what it really is a companion reading to go with our Torah portion. A companion reading from where? Oh, sorry, I jiggled that. All right, so this is a confusion that happens a lot. We talk about the Torah, and we mean the 5 books of Moses, but we also talk about Torah, and that means something bigger, but it's very vague. So let me explain to you what we talk about when we're talking about our scriptures. We have 2 terms for the Hebrew scriptures. Of course, we can't have one, we're Jews. It's not like English where you just talk about the Bible. We have Mikra, which is vague but useful. It means scriptures. But then we have the much more wonderful word Tanakh. All right, and here is the Tanakh. There it is in Hebrew, and there it is in English. And what is it? It's an acronym. We Jews love acronyms. We may have invented acronyms, right? Which is taking the first letter of various words and putting them together and creating a new compact but meaningful phrase. So in English, we like to just repeat the letters. Instead of Federal Bureau of Investigation, we say FBI. Instead of Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, we say ICBM, LBGT, Q plus, things like that. But in Hebrew, we like to actually make words out of those letters. So the entire scripture actually consists of 3 sections. And those 3 sections, the first letter of each one is taken and combined together to make the word Tanakh. Now, this is my Hebrew Bible. It's been with me for a quarter of a century, and because I'm an action rabbi, it's taken a little battering. Sorry about that. So cool. It's very cool to go on in here. And if you look in the end page, you see that it actually lays out for the reader all of what's in the Tanakh. This isn't even the table of contents yet. Right? So Tanakh is the combination of the first letter of Torah, the first letter of Nevi'im, which means prophets, and the first letter of Ketuvim, which means writings. And put them all together, you get the word Tanakh. And so the Jewish Bible, the Hebrew Bible, is divided topically. All right. The Torah, the instructions, our most fundamental document. The writings of the prophets, which we call the prophets or the Nevi'im. Now, these are not automatically just first-person descriptions from the prophets of what they've experienced. There's also third-person narratives about prophets and things like that. And then Ketuvim is, I always call it the potpourri. It's everything that doesn't fall into the first 2 categories. So poems and novellas and proverbs and all kinds of stuff is preserved back here. So that makes for the whole Hebrew Bible. And when we read, I feel like I'm talking around, when we read from, for our Shabbat readings, what we read is we read a section from the Torah, and then we add a complementary section taken from the prophets. They don't work together in terms of we start at the beginning of the Torah and therefore we begin at the prophets. Rather, the Haftarah is selected to go with the Torah portion topically or thematically. There's something in the particular Haftarah portion that the rabbis have selected for this that complements the Torah portion. So, and actually this is an excellent example that we're about to begin, because our Haftarah for Bereshit, for the very first Torah portion of our year, is Isaiah 42. Why 42? Why not 41? Why not 1? Because Bereshit, the first Torah portion in the Torah, is about the creation of the world. And lo and behold, 42 in Isaiah makes a reference to the creation of the world. Now, understand that all the different creation descriptions found throughout the Hebrew Bible are not going to be perfectly aligned with each other. The Hebrew Bible, which is a library, not a single book, despite the bookbinder's work, is a work that was composed over the course of 1,000 years. Yes, 1,000 years. So this library preserves many different traditions from different periods of Israelite history, and that includes varying myths about the creation of the universe. We know Genesis 1 so well, we think that that's it, that's the creation story, but in fact there are multiple references to creation that appear throughout the Hebrew Bible, and they don't always mirror exactly what you see happening in Genesis 1. You have, for example, Isaiah 74, Psalm 74, Psalm 104, Job 38. Each one of them has a different description of how the world is created by God, and the order and the images and the way it's expressed are all different. And that's okay. Mythologically, in the ancient world, it was very rare to have one consistent story. Stories are told by many different people from many different perspectives, and they often vary, and that's okay. And we shouldn't get anxious about it in the way maybe sometimes our neighbors do about what's the right message, right? So let's take a look at our Haftarah for the Torah portion of Bereshit and see what it has to say to us. All right. So, and just to complicate things, to make it clear that this is not being selected by any sort of order other than theme, we begin in Isaiah 42, verse 5. Apparently, the sages thought that the first 4 verses of Isaiah 42 were not relevant to what they wanted to say thematically about the Torah portion. All right. And in fact, what's going to happen is this is a very long chapter. There are many beautiful passages, and they will vary in their focus because that's the nature of prophetic speaking. They address an idea, then they move on to another idea, then they move on to another idea. We'll learn more about that in the future. So what I'm going to focus on is Isaiah. It's the longest book of the Hebrew Bible. And I'm just going to take out of the 66 chapters of Isaiah, I'm just going to take 4 verses from this much larger Haftarah. And we're going to explore it because I think there's something powerful and heartfelt in this particular passage. All right. So it begins, Koamar Ha'el Adonai. Thus says the eternal God, or God Adonai. You could translate it a number of ways. Again, common to prophetic rhetoric is that they claim to know exactly what God wants us to know, and they say, "Thus says God." Rabbis don't do that. We say, "I think it means this," or "my interpretation is," and so we have a little more humility about what we think we know about God's opinions than the prophets do. I'll talk to you at some point about the phenomenology of being a prophet in the ancient world. How did it work? How did it not work, etc. But Od lo lamadnu, we haven't learned that yet. All right. Thus says the eternal God, the one who created the heavens and stretched them out, who spread out the earth and all that grows upon it. All right, there it is. There's your connection to Bereshit. It's not identical, right? God creates heaven and earth just like it does in the Genesis story, but it sounds a little bit more here like God is making a bed, right? He spreads out the top sheet and puts the fitted sheet underneath. It's a slightly different rhetorical description. And then it goes on to something that, again, does sound like Genesis. The one who created the heavens and stretched them out, who made the earth and all that grows upon it, who gives breath to its people and spirit to all who walk upon it, it being the earth. So here we have a parallel. Of course, God breathes breath into human beings in Genesis 2. So this is very much in the same vein. And just be aware that the words breath and spirit are very closely aligned in Hebrew. It's not that they're necessarily talking about two distinct entities, the soul, the spirit, the life within people. These are intersecting, overlapping concepts to our ancestors. So there's not a huge distinction being made here. But then it goes on. I, the Eternal, have called you, that is you in the personal sense, in righteousness. I, the Eternal, have called you in righteousness, taken you by the hand. Such a lovely image. God holds our hand. I am the one who created you and made you a covenant people. And now we know who the you is. It may be collective. The you is the people Israel, the children of Israel, the Jewish people. A light to the nations. Famous line. Or Lagoyim, light to the nations. Now, don't get put off by the word goyim in Yiddish. It tends to be pejorative. It means foreigners. But in biblical Hebrew, goyim means nations or ethnic groups. We, the Jewish people, are a goy, and there are many goys out there in the world, all right? So, but I've made you, the Jewish people, a covenant people, a light to the nations. And then it goes on with this next rhetorical spin: to open the eyes that are blind, to bring the captive out of confinement, those who sit in darkness out of the dungeon. I am the Eternal, that is my name. I will not share my glory with another, my praise with idols. Now, this is wonderful stuff, okay, because it does, in fact, start out with the general creation. It alludes to general humanity, but then it narrows down to focus on us, the people Israel, the Jewish people. And his message is, just as I created humanity in general, I have created you, the Jewish people, specifically. And just as God has created humanity for a purpose, we're all familiar with the Jewish idea that human beings are co-creators with God, that God creates a world up to a certain point, and then he gives us the authority to make it better. But it goes even further when it comes to the specific project of the Jewish people, right? And what it is a message about something we're very familiar with from the book of Genesis, the movement from darkness to light. Remember, in Genesis, God says, let there be light, and there was light, and it illuminated the darkness. And so we are being told as Jews that we are to be a light to the nations. And he gives three specific examples of what that would mean: to open the eyes of the blind, to bring the captive out of confinement, those who sit in darkness out of the dungeon. Not a comprehensive list, but a kind of evocative list of moving from darkness to light. What does it mean? What does it mean to move people out of darkness towards light? Well, it could be quite literal. Maybe we're talking about opening the eyes of the blind, provide medicine, provide care, heal people, help them recover. To be a captive in confinement can be quite literal. Maybe we're supposed to rescue Jews who are in danger. Maybe we are supposed to help people who are in a country where they are oppressed. We want to deliver them and bring them out of oppression. People in a dungeon. Maybe we're supposed to help save those who are being persecuted unjustly, but maybe we're also supposed to help people who are in jail and need to get on with their lives and need to start over again. Maybe all of that is true, but it also is metaphorical in its rhetoric, right? So we're supposed to bring light to dark places. Maybe it's the light of knowledge to the darkness of ignorance. Maybe it's the light of ethics to the darkness of a world without moral compass. There's any number of ways to read this, but the point is that we have been given a very, very auspicious, overwhelming, significant task. We, the Jewish people, the smallest of all people, are supposed to do the biggest of all things. We're supposed to help all the people of the world leave whatever darkness they're in and head towards the light. Now, the most important thing I would add to this as a proviso, as commentary to this is not a call to be arrogant. It's not like we have all the answers. It's not like we are especially special people, but rather just the reverse. We are called to be servants. We are called to be helpers. We are called in humility as creatures that are co-created with all of other human beings to do whatever we can to improve and advance the lives of all humanity. Certainly, we are obligated to take care of each other as Jews, as children of Israel. We need to watch out for each other wherever we are, whether we are here in America and we have to fight anti-Semitism, or it's the Jews in Israel and we have to help protect them from their enemies. We have that obligation, but the obligation does not end with us. Light does not stop at invisible boundaries, where the light extends to all humanity, and we have an obligation to all humanity, as overwhelming as that may seem. Of course, we can't do everything, but the idea is that we have an obligation to set an example of what it means to be empathic, caring, just, moral, and help everyone to become the most human and humane people they can be. It is a call for us to help every human being cultivate their human potential. That's what Isaiah is saying that we have the obligation to do. And of course, this comes right at the beginning of the new year, 5783, where we're thinking about how can I do better in the year ahead? So it all comes together in a kind of synergistic kind of way. And it is a heartfelt message of hope and of obligation that comes to each and every Jew. Well, I hope this is a good start to understanding the Haftarot, and I will continue in coming weeks to give you more tent peg knowledge and also to expose you to more of the prophets, of the Nevi'im, with their often spectacular and sometimes puzzling messages, and see if we can see how they speak to our situation and our lives as Jews and as human beings. Well, have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.